Okay, today we're going to rebuild this Husqvarna 372 XP. The saw was straight gassed and burned up, so it's going to need a new piston, cylinder, complete rebuild. And we got a big bore kit, the 52mm kit. It's a new cylinder and piston. Got the new rings, new intake boot and clamp, new crank bearings and seals. Got a new crank seal, head gasket, exhaust gasket, complete kit. Went ahead and got a new carburetor, air filter, and this is a used muffler. This one here's got a pretty good dent in it, so we're going to change the fuel filter. Pretty much just go through the whole saw and recondition it. The only special tool we're going to have is for removing the clutch, and also we're going to have to spread the case to get the crank out and put the new crank seal in. So the next we just need to disassemble it and go ahead and start cleaning parts. Okay, so we got it all torn down, case is split, got everything laid out, disassembled. Got everything ready to go back together as far as the crankcase. Went ahead and put new crank seals and crank bearings in. And when you're scraping the gasket on this, just use a razor blade. Do it real easy. Don't try to use any kind of buffing wheel or anything. It's aluminum, so it's real easy to take material out where you don't want it to be and end up with a crankcase leak after you get it back together. To install these bearings and seals, pretty much you just need a seal, bearing and race to set it, and then your seals, about a 20mm socket on a 1/2" extension will kind of help you pop those in. As far as special tools, you'll need a flywheel puller and some different bolts, piston stop, some emery cloth. I use this socket to steady the case while I was knocking the bearings back in. Pretty much these are all the tools I ended up needing, so nothing real fancy. And if you're going to go as far as to rebuild this thing, you definitely want to change these bearings out, because these here, just spinning them, they're pretty rough, and the crank seals are pretty well ate up. And because this one was straight gassed, it saw some pretty serious temperatures, and it doesn't take much to distort those bearings. So, and when you're driving in these bearings, this side here is your bar side, and when you're setting them, make sure that you go to the very bottom and they're completely set. You'll notice on the flywheel side how much deeper it is compared to on the bar side, and that's actually to allow for this crank. But you can see one side of the crank is flat and the other side has that nose hanging out there. So, and also check your crank bearings, make sure that they're not real sloppy and worn out. You don't want to put this back together and end up having to take it right back apart. So, and to pull your flywheel, just pop your starting pawls out and use those bolt holes for your puller. So, here's your piston. You can see where she's completely smoked. If you look at the top, you can see that eyebrow effect it's got, and that's where all the heat was actually spread all the way to the back of the piston, to the intake side. So, now we'll go ahead and put the gasket in and put the crank and everything back together, and see if we can get this thing back together and get her going. Here's a quick tip for you. When you're putting your cylinder on top of your piston, this is a large size plastic ring that you need for compressing the piston rings. Make sure you have your head gasket set and your tool sitting under your cylinder. Look inside your intake and you can see the pins, and double check and make sure that your rings are lined up and sitting in the pins right. Alright, there you go. Completely rebuilt Husqvarna 372 XP. All new seals, new piston and cylinder. Brand new set of fallen spikes. So I was ready to go. I got all my parts from Myrtle Creek Saw Shop, Myrtle Creek, Oregon. 541-863-5387. Give them a call. They can set you up with a nice package. Completely rebuild one of these saws, or pretty much any maker model. That's where I get my parts from.